Good morning to you all, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. And I'm your host, Sal Greco. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I hope everyone had a good time out there. It was nice weather. I think there's a little cold front coming down here in South Florida. But as it is, welcome, welcome, welcome. See Lone Silencer, Matt O'Brien. I see Rob 2326. So thanks for being here. If you guys can, if you're watching us on Rumble, on the Sal Greco Show channel, please hit that like button, hit the Rumble button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on YouTube, where we finally reached 7,000 plus subscribers, thank you for that little milestone. On YouTube, please hit that like button. Also hit the notification button. Become a subscriber. Also, there's a hype button. So if you can hit that hype button as well, that elevates in the leaderboards and pushes you through the social engineering. Okay. And then, of course, if you're watching us on X, on @TheSalGreco, please like this. And, of course, share this out to all your friends in the low information bubble. Plus, we just joined Facebook. You could follow us there, but I'm just getting used to that. Again, I haven't used Facebook in about 16 or 17 years. So it's the Sal Greco Show, just like Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, and TikTok. So a lot happened over the weekend. Yes, I know. Briefly, I could touch up on, yes, the Mets swept the Marlins. So we had revenge from the weekend prior, which I went to Lone Depot Park, and the Mets looked listless. So let's just get that one out of the way. But I want to get to this first video. And this video was something that happened over the weekend. And I know I discussed at length on my channel. You could check out the videos about Anthony Miranda. Yes, he's out as the sheriff. He was unceremoniously fired, or deservedly so fired. So, but this is about something else. So let's play this. It's about Frankie Palaguachi's in the chat. So play this, and we'll give you the take. To you from outside the Sunrise Harbor Shops here in a cloudy Fort Lauderdale, where it's 85 degrees. We have an exclusive for you. So if you do watch the Sal Greco Show, which streams Mondays and Thursdays at 11:05 a.m. on Rumble, YouTube, and X, you always hear about Frank Palaguachi, who was a former NYPD officer. Technically, he was a detective who was terminated due to a bogus Dole test, which was proven numerous times in court that it's not scientific. It is not a factual test. Well, he's challenging this through the courts via his attorney, Eric Sanders, and he's also petitioning the government to look into this Psychmedics company. He was denied benefits from unemployment from the New York City Department of Labor, and he appealed that. And also at that appeal, Eric Sanders, his attorney, took that pro bono. So Frankie Palaguachi won his appeal. Eric Sanders taking this case pro bono was very helpful to Frankie Palaguachi, because he's doing it for the right reasons, unlike what the peanut gallery always out there says. But, they have a lot of issues on their own. And this proves one thing. The civil case that's coming up is going to be quite a battle for legal supremacy on this matter. Frankie, congratulations. You deserve better. And don't forget to check out the Sal Greco Show June 1st, Monday morning, 11:05 a.m., because we're going to have retired detective Dave Terrell, and this is going to be a barn burner of a show. So that happened over the weekend. So before I have Dave come on, I'm going to read this off. And by the way, you could read my article also, salgreco.com, read all about the situation with Frank Palaguachi, because it's really heartbreaking what this now former detective has been dealing with the police department. And he is $499.99 to the Sal Greco Show. Says, Sal, thank you for exposing the truth. He says, Sal, thank you for exposing the truth. Special thanks to Eric Sanders, an outstanding attorney who did not have to represent me in this matter, yet chose to do so on his own time. This is not about benefits, demotions, or promotions. It is about the truth. Hair testing is unreliable and should never determine employment. In God I trust. And Frank, we are 100% behind you. This test is unscientific. Psych Medics was already beaten in a case in Boston where they had to rehire police officers they fired using the same tests. Okay. And that's the main part of this is right there. The Department of Labor initially denied Palaguacci benefits after concluding he lost his employment through misconduct. The case stemmed from NYPD disciplinary charges alleging he violated department policy after testing positive for cannabis. But of course, he also tested negative on the same tests, but they don't tell you that, but that's what happened. So, it's ridiculous that he's going through this. It's very hard. You have to understand to get terminated. I would know this, to get terminated on the false pretense. And this is a test that's already been proven unscientific. It's very hard, but he finally got his unemployment benefits, and a special thanks to Eric Sanders, who represented him pro bono. He didn't have to take that case, but he did. He's doing what he feels is right. I know you got a peanut gallery out there that just can't stop talking about the guy. I don't know what the hell's wrong with them, but whatever. But where do you see attorneys doing that? Usually that would cost a lot of money because it's a separate matter. So it's got nothing to do with his original case. But, this is a moment. I can't wait to see how this is going to play out in court, because now unemployment's saying, oh, well, you deserve your unemployment benefits. But they sidestepped the issue. They skirted the real issue and just gave it on a technicality instead of addressing the issue, which is going to get it addressed in the court. So once again, a special shout out to Frankie Palaguacci. We're behind you. We're with you. And the world is watching, especially for the police department with the stupid drug screening test, which has been proven it's unscientific, and they continue to railroad people out of the job today with this. So now, without any further ado, I've known this man personally for, I think, now 10 or 11 years. He is one of the few people that when I was on the job and going through my stuff would talk to me. He wasn't treating me like I had lepers like many others do. And he's been through the ringer just as much as I've been through the ringer. But he's very well known, and he probably has more arrests than, I don't know, squadron of cops together. He was one of the most, if not like the most active cop that I've ever known when I was working in the police department. And recently he retired. So, but he has a lot to say, and he's a wealth of information. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on the now retired NYPD detective now, David Terrell. Dave, it's great to finally have you on here. I wanted, obviously you couldn't come on for obvious reasons, but Dave, welcome on the Sal Greco Show. I just want you to know, I'm behind you all the way with everything. I know like everything that's gone on with you, but to speed people up, give a little bit of a brief history or like a synopsis of your career and everything you went through, a little bit like where you were, the fact you have, let's be honest, you probably have way past 1,000 arrests. So just let everyone hear a little bit about you and your career.
Well, I started out in 2002. I started out in the 7-7 precinct. I worked there for about 6.5 years, and I decided to move upstate, and I wound up going to the 4-2. And I know he's always on your show, the great Chief Mike Marino. He's the one that actually got me transferred to the 4-2 precinct. He probably don't even remember me, but he actually got me transferred to the 4-2, where I was in the 4-2, and I was the youth officer, which gave me a wealth of knowledge moving me into the FIO, because a lot of the crimes that were being committed in the 4-2 were by a lot of youths in the 4-2, which obviously they went to the adulthood, which made me a really good FIO. And we had a really good team over there in the 4-2, and we were doing great things in the 4-2 precinct. So from there, we want to discuss what happened in the 4-2, or do we want to just keep going with the career the career path.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going in career path until we reach almost the end, and then I wanted to show you something else that just because people, like I said, if you don't know, Dave is super well known, not only in the NYPD, all the way up to the top, and including New York City as far as the political landscape. So continue, Dave, just so everyone can set the table for everybody.
Right. So I'm going to set the table. So let me just revert back. So when I was in the 4-2, I worked for Inspector O'Connell, great man. And because I was so active, he couldn't put me in the squad because back then you couldn't be in the squad unless you had 10 years on. So what he said was, I'm going to give you a bunch of cold cases in the 7-7, which he did. He created like a cold case unit where we worked upstairs hand in hand with the squad. And that gave me a great knowledge of how to use the computer and how to look up cases and to investigate cases. So he gave me like 25 cold cases in the 7-7. And out of those 25, I think we solved like 19 cold cases, which was really, really good for me. It gave me great experience. And then I transferred over to the 4-2 precinct. I really didn't want to leave Brooklyn North. I thought it was a great place to work, but just the travel and the logistics was just too much for me. And then I came over to the 4-2, and I worked for Inspector Timmy Bouget, great man, great guy, hard worker. One of the best bosses I worked for. He put me over there as the youth officer. It was tough for a little while, but once you get renowned and known in the area, it wound up being a good place. The 4-2 probably has the most schools in the city, which a lot of people don't know. It's only about 1.5 miles big, but if you take out Crotona Park, it's probably 0.8 miles, and we have 72 schools in that community. So a lot of people don't know that. It's one of the largest school areas in the city, the 4-2 precinct. Covers about 0.8 miles, and we had a great team there, and we would go to schools, talk to kids, just try to avoid them from being arrested, which obviously, in the South Bronx is very hard to do at this point in time. Yeah. And it's still, nothing has changed in the 4-2 precinct. But we had a great group of guys there. So from there, I was in the youth officer for quite some time. And then I believe Steve Ortiz came in, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to switch you over to the FIO." And I worked with Adrian Urici, who was probably the best supervisor, sergeant I've ever worked for in my entire life. And he taught me a lot, and I worked with him for quite some time. And then we can get into where everything starts to stumble. So let me just put these on real quick. So when I was working in the 4-2 as the FIO, I became, we had like maybe 1 or 2 gangs that was just horrible in the 4-2, which were the Mac Ballers and the Brims. And they presented a case to us, myself and Sergeant Urici, saying, "Hey, you want to deal with this lineman crew?" That lineman crew probably was, I would say, 75% of the crime in the 4-2 precinct. Either they were being victims or they were victimizing someone. So they presented us with a challenge of trying to see if we could get those guys off the street. And they gave us a case, myself, Sergeant Urici, and 2 other officers that worked with me, Nick McGarry and Eva Pena. It sounds a familiar name. She actually worked with the case too. And we worked that lineman case, and it was the biggest indictment at the time in the history of the Bronx. It was a 96 count indictment. We had put 17 guys away, and things were looking good in my career. Things were looking up. It looked like I was heading in the right path. Crime in the 4-2 pretty much reduced to nothing. And from there, we lost Steve Ortiz because he did such a great job, because there was nothing left for him to do there. Everything was numbers. So he had driven down numbers so low in the 4-2. At that point, he had to get promoted. They had no choice. It broke my heart. He was a great boss. And then they brought in, I believe it was, I don't remember that CO after him, who they brought in after him. And then that's when everything started after that.
That's when everything started. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we'll stop right there for the moment.
Okay.
I wanted to show you something. So I'm just going to pivot real quick and we'll come back to this because then
Okay.
I also want Jack to come in this. So there was this other video I was going to show you because now you guys here, Dave is well in tune with the Bronx. Obviously, it's split into two boroughs now. And there was a whole incident in the last week, which, by the way, we could discuss it later on. But it seems that the Sal Greco Show basically dropped all the tidbits that the Daily News then picked up and said, oh, look, we write, all this stuff, everything that I had said Thursday and before about the entire incident with Benjamin Gurley, they then wrote about it and says, oh, the other guy's the aggressor, all this stuff that we said. But so because the incident with Benjamin Gurley, and he's right now currently modified and he's been put on the sidelines for now, they need a new commander in Brooklyn North, which is what I said was the big problem because you know how political this job is and the soccer mom and everything. So I found out through these sources of what's going on. So I want to play this and then get your take and then bring Jack on and he'll give his take. Another beautiful morning here in Pompano, Florida, where it is 85 degrees currently. And of course, Florida is a sunny place for shady people, but that's not why we're here today. I'm going to discuss, according to my sources, the NYPD executive roulette that is going on right now for Bronx North commander position. This was a position that was held by Benjamin Gurley, who unfortunately had his incident and currently is modified. So number one is Nunez. He is his executive right now. He worked underneath Benjamin Gurley. He's currently the acting borough commander. Would get 2 stars, be a promotion for him. He's an assistant chief, good guy. The second name being thrown around is TERELL Anderson. He's an inspector. If you remember, he was embroiled in that scandal regarding the unlicensed psychologist in the candidate assessment division. Of course, it wasn't his fault. He took the fall, and I guess for his silence, he will now get some high position in the future. That was the deal I was told was made behind the scenes, according to my sources. Next up, Anuides Castillo. This guy was embroiled in a scandal. What was that scandal? The nightclub extortion racket scheme involving the former police commissioner, Ed Caban, and his brother, and whatever went on there. His command wasn't answering 311s. Also, he's friends with a lot of these nightclubs and all of that. And then finally, Melissa Egger, who's in charge of Staten Island currently, but has been asking to go to either Manhattan North or the Bronx, where I believe it would be a much shorter commute for her. She would be the first female commander of the Bronx. So that is also a star that the soccer mom would love to put up on her resume. There you have it, folks. NYPD Executive Roulette, Bronx Borough Commander Edition is going to be in charge. So, Dave, there's a couple, and one thing before I let you give your take on this. Okay. I get a couple of people that told me, well, Chief Jaffe was the first female commander in the Bronx. The Bronx as a borough, as a whole, about 2.5 decades ago, yes, she was a commander there. That's 2.5 decades ago. This is Bronx North and Bronx South. This is the soccer mom's brainstorm. She's taking credit for this. She believes she has a political future. I best equate this to the way people are saying Jaffe was the first. It's just, okay, if anyone doesn't remember their history, the first professional sports team in New York City to win a championship was the New York Giants, who are now the San Francisco Giants, 1905. They won when baseball had like 6 or 7 teams, right? They won in 4 games where they shut out the Philadelphia Athletics. I am almost positive everyone would have said the New York Yankees, who won in 1923. So the first team to win anything and the first team to win a World Series in New York City was the New York Giants. No one will remember that. They will only remember the New York Yankees. Why? Because they're the last team to win the World Series in New York, and they won under these new 30-plus teams, and there's a designated hitter, all this stuff. So right. The best way for me to equate it is if Melissa Egger got this position as the first female commander of Bronx North, it is a fact, and it gives the soccer mom this is her running for office. I kept the city safe during FIFA. I have crime that went down underneath my reign, especially in the Bronx North, where I appointed the first female, because we all know she has problems with the Hispanic and Black community. because I don't see too much of that being represented in the NYPD underneath her. That's a different discussion, right? So in my take, what I'm saying, and this is being discussed, folks, inside the halls of One Police Plaza from the very top. It's not me saying it. Melissa Egger would be the first female to be the commander in Bronx North. That is what they are discussing. The other three people I understand, Nunez, of course, probably would be like, he's already there. He'd probably be the best guy to do it, but that's, it's up in the air right now which way they're going, but that's the chatter. I don't know how Castillo survived this one, Dave. Other executives are saying, how did this guy even become a chief after everything that happened? And they owe Terrell, as you know, because Terrell Anderson he fell on a sword for something he had virtually nothing to do with.
Absolutely nothing to do with.
So that's the other problem. So, I mean, you give your take on that one, because those are the four names and who I believe they're leaning heavily towards, which is Melissa Egger.
Well, I think you said it best, Sal. Nunez is already there. Why not just give it to him? Give it to him. I mean, let's just look at it like this. He's been a Bronx guy. He's Hispanic. Why not give it to him? Bronx and is predominantly Black and Hispanic. Why not give it to him? Why not? Why not? We know the soccer mom is not going to do it, but why not just give it to him? It just makes sense. And if it makes sense, but this department doesn't make sense with a lot of things that they do anyway. So, her decisions. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He knows because Nunez is already there. He's been with Gurley. Everybody loves Gurley. You would think, all right, well, he's going to keep the same agenda, which has been there for a couple of years. Instead, whoever comes in might be a completely different agenda. And we know the soccer mom's agenda. I mean, look who she put in the Bronx South. So, again, this is who we're hearing, what we understand they're leaning towards, because first female. Now, I'm not saying she's not qualified either, because she's more than qualified, but
she's more than qualified. I don't really know her, so that's one chief that I can say I don't know. But what I do know is Nunez is there.
Why not keep him?
Why not keep him?
You're
Just
right.
promote him. You have Gons there and you have Nunez. Why not keep him? Or how about, now that we have more information on Gurley's case, how about just give him back his gun and shield and put him back there?
Yeah, there's a lot was said there last week. People were jumping all over the place, and I shook the tree and able to get all these little. You start seeing the little nuts falling from the tree, so the squirrel will pick them up. And now you're hearing what I was saying, what I was told through my sources is the reality of what this is, and that. Again, it looks like a Chief Thompson special, which, you and I know that guy all too well at this point. Jack, the producer, the co-host, the wingman, Jack, step on the stage. Jack, you now saw this thing with this Bronx North commander, what they want to do with this. What is your take on that after you saw those four names and the direction of what the soccer mom wants to do?
By far the most egregious name on that list is Castillo's, because not only did he enable Edward Caban, he enabled James Caban, his brother, who was actually named as one of the city's worst landlords back in 2013 and spent 30 days in jail for it as a result. And let's also remember that James Caban was fired from the police department. And then Castillo said that James Caban was his brother Edward and made everyone at the station house salute him. So he was essentially enabling a criminal and allowing him to run the police department, not only after he had been fired, but after he was found criminally guilty of being one of the worst slumlords. And Castillo's promotion is that much worse when you consider that Mamdani recently was imposing a $31 million fine for bad landlords. He's trying to crack down on them. It's like, you got to practice what you're going to preach as a police commissioner. I feel like too often in the NYPD and New York City government, what's old is being packaged into nice casing, being put in a Michael Kors bag, and then being handed to us as if it's what's new. That's not the case with someone like Castillo. He cannot get another promotion. He should be lucky to have another job. This was a guy, David, who promoted identity theft. Right? I mean, he told everyone at a station house that Edward Caban or James Caban was Edward Caban, and James Caban was a criminal. I mean, he had members of the police department believing that a criminal was the police commissioner. How crazy is that? No, when this guy was a sergeant, he was fired from the police force because he wrongfully detained an individual who he thought had stolen money from his wife. He never actually stole money from his wife, but he wrongfully detained the taxi driver. He was later fired for it. And then to try and recuperate some of the funds he got from losing his job, he became a slumlord in the Bronx and apparently was running nightclubs out of apartment buildings and getting noise complaints removed through his brother. And then, he's being brought back into the department essentially as the de facto leader, and he's a stunt double, not his actual brother. How crazy is that? You can't have a stunt double promoter moving up the food chain in the police department. I don't care what Jessica Tisch or Mayor Mamdani says. I mean, we're allowing the old bad dogs to run the asylum, and it's not a good thing.
I wanted to say this when you said that. Actually, this was during the height of Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, also, which involved those guys. But this guy Castillo is actually being sued right now by our attorney Eric Sanders in the other case with the lieutenant because Castillo had the 311s going on in his precinct. I believe it was the 3-4 CO, and they were ignoring 311s that were going to all the nightclubs, which once again steers towards the Cabans and their little mob associate friend and all their friends. So Castillo, essentially, he was the underling to Raul Stevenson, who was the party chief, if you remember, who's also being sued. I don't know how that guy got his rank. And I'm telling you, out of this discussion, out of the 4 people that were mentioned, the discussion amongst the executives themselves is, how did Castillo make rank, and that he has not put in the time to even earn that? They don't know who's behind him getting this push, essentially, because he's not a guy that should be pushed. But we don't understand why he became a chief. I don't know. Is it historic 311s being answered? I don't know. Answering. So, I mean, so I guess there's your take on that, folks. So keep an eye out on this. I mean, look at this guy.
One more thing real quick with Castillo. I mean, you want to talk about moving up the food chain quickly. He went from captain to deputy inspector in 5 years. And in the same time it took him to go from captain to deputy inspector, he's now gone from deputy inspector to deputy chief. Doesn't something look a little bit off about that? I mean, he's run up the food chain, and by all indications, he's going to be getting another promotion at some point in the future.
I'll tell you what it is it's slower than Richie Taylor. I mean, Richie Taylor got there up real quick.
That's not a good point of comparison here, right? Because we're comparing 2 Nepo babies.
Well,
Not 2 cronies. They're 2 cronies. This guy, I'm just telling you, I don't know why he made deputy chief, because he's in lawsuits. It was very bad what happened. And I'll be honest with you, as bad as the police department might have appeared and was under Ed Caban as police commissioner, who was the party commissioner, right? And he had the party department. It's far worse under the soccer mom, because there's all these elements around her that all these components are just running rogue and running wild, and there's no stopping them. It's a miracle. Nothing catastrophic has happened yet. And just by the grace of God, because you got the guy in IAB running wild, Hansy and the chief of department running wild. You have frat houses everywhere. The soccer mom herself, who enables the people around her to do crazy things. And the cops in the street, the rank and file, they could tell you that they're suffering. There's no help coming because they're all self-serving. They're all serving themselves. It's really chaotic underneath her. And at least with Ed Caban, as corrupt as things were, he was a cop and he understood some things. And, when it came to discipline, as crooked as it be, he wasn't as heavy-handed as this woman who gives out 40 days 40-day vacation. It's if you have white socks on. I mean, she's out of her mind. And This is what happens when someone who's not a police officer, has no history in the police department in general, becomes a police commissioner. And so for that reason, the police department is far worse under the soccer mom than it was with Ed Caban. And that's crazy to say that, but I think that's a fact. But Dave, you were talking about the 4-2, and then is when everything starts, when you are progressing forward. And then there were a few things that basically began the beginning of muddying up your name and doing all this other crazy stuff, even though I don't know anyone else that worked as hard as you, other than your coworkers around you, but you're working so hard, and then fill in the blank.
And then I get a call November of 2016 from the union. Hey, there's going to be an article coming out about you, and don't worry, everything's going to be okay. So I'm like, well, what is? I have no idea what they're talking about. Next, you know, it's Sarah Wallace from NBC News with Manny Gomez. And all of a sudden, I'm this corrupt cop that goes out here and I beat up everybody. I offer sex to the perps' mothers and all types of nonsense that was coming out. And I'm saying to myself, like, I could not even believe. And that was breaking news. And it was for practically almost 6 weeks straight. I was the topic of breaking news from Sarah Wallace every single day with the I-Team. The I-Team investigates. And they found all of these perps in the 4-2 who created all of these fallacy stories about Detective Terrell beat me up. He did this. He offered my mother sex. He offered this. And, Detective Terrell also gambled for a defendant's life. I rolled a dice game with a guy to prevent them from going to jail. But, of course, like the media always does, they half-ass a story and didn't put the actual story up. So at that time, we were doing, I forgot what the name of the detail was, but you have to get 5 summonses by the end of the day. And basically, we saw about 13, 14 guys smoking weed and drinking on the corner. So me being a cop, I said, hey, they were rolling dice. I said, hey, listen, if they were rolling CeeLo, I said, if any of you guys can beat me in CeeLo, I will not issue summonses, and you guys just have to clear the corner. That's it. I said, if you do win, you're good to go. If you don't, I got to give everybody summonses. So we did run everybody's name. One kid did pop. He had a Supreme Court warrant. We put him in the car. I said, with the exception of him, everybody else, if you win, will get a break. I lost. I let everyone go. Now, in between that, they actually was recording it. And I said to them, I'm glad that you're recording. This is what they don't show. I said, I'm actually hugging the guys in the video. I said, this is community policing 101. Not a lot of cops know how to play CeeLo in the hood. So I'm actually hugging the guys. And then we roll the dice. But they only show a partial part of the video where I'm just rolling dice, but don't show anything else. And that became Sarah Wallace, Manny Gomez, and Scola's big thing. Oh, this guy's out here doing this. He's a corrupt cop. He's doing, and that was never, ever the case, ever. So
I remember this very well.
Yes. So, going back, these guys pretty much damn near ruined my life. They, it was pretty horrific. It was some dark times in my life, really, really dark times in my life, because here it is. My career is skyrocketing. I'm good with everyone. And I go from that to, they take my gun and shield. And what they really took the gun and shield for was I had, at that time, when everything came out, I was actually going through a pretty nasty divorce, because obviously when people see stuff like that on TV, they think it's true. So, of course, she actually believed the same thing, my ex-wife, and went to, I had to go to court, family court. She's presenting articles to the judge. They got me out here being some type of monster. Oh, my goodness, and it was hard. It was really, really hard. I went through it for a long time. And I went to speak with, went to talk to the union and asking them, like, hey, can you guys help me out here? Like, none of this is true. Like, what's going on here? Oh, don't worry. Everything's going to work itself out. Nothing's working itself out. The only person that I spoke to that actually told me, he said, Dave, listen, I know what the truth is. And, was Chief Monahan. He actually went on Hot 97 and he was on Cisco and Ebert. And he actually said, you don't know him, that this case take its course. And I'm sure everything's going to work itself out. He was the only one that actually stood behind me and gave me a little bit of files that some people can believe on his job. The union did, at that time, absolutely nothing for me, zero. And that's when Eric Sanders came in.
And that's when Eric Sanders came in. And then how many, there was like, how many civil suits came out of that?
There was 18 federal lawsuits that was presented by the Scholar firm.
Oh my God.
18, and every last one of them was dismissed. Every last one.
18 lawsuits filed against you. I remember I kept seeing you in the newspaper, and it, even on not just the mainstream, like you were on the off side, like off, not mainstream, but like their little, like I guess their little underlings underneath them at that time, and they made you like you were, what do they call it, the monster cop or something?
The monster cop, cover of the New York Post.
Yep,
monster cop. You
were a monster cop. 18 civil cases against, federal cases against you. Actually, no, Eric said is in the chat, he says that was actually 22 cases.
So 22, all dismissed. Go ahead, Jack. I see you want to say something?
22 cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a crazy number of cases just to begin with. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that. But do you think you were kind of used a little bit as a political pawn? My mind's moving a mile a minute here, and I'm thinking kind of tying this back to Edmund Raymond's most recent promotion to NYC sheriff. He talked a lot about the quota system. He spoke out very vigorously about that. He started on the police force back in 2015. You were going through this in 2016. So, I mean, it speaks to how political of a time this was going on in the NYPD. Do you think you were kind of unfairly targeted and used as a pawn to try and fit the department's narrative?
At that time, they had Mayor DeBozo as the mayor, and he was, anti-cop anyway. So when this came out, this was like perfect for him. So I'm sure he had his hands in the soup where he wanted to make sure this cop pays, and we're going to make an example of him. And, Darcel Clark, I believe she had just got in, and, there'll be no corruption under me and this, that, and the next. But meanwhile, I'm sitting in their office and we're talking about doing gang takedowns. And I had all the emails to show everything that they were saying that wasn't happening, that actually was happening. I had every single email that I was communicating with the Bronx DA's office, with the gang team, the gang unit, and how we were going about taking these gangs down. So it was baffling to me how they were saying that they didn't know I was just going rogue. And that really wasn't the case. But we never, ever got to present anything to anyone because everything seemed to have shut down. But to this day, I still have the emails of everything that we were supposed to be doing. And there's still some homicides and shootings that were still not taken care of from the Bronx DA's office, that are still open cases that I still have pictures and videos, and they refuse to do anything about it.
So wait, you're telling me there's open cases from this time frame?
Absolutely, 100%.
They won't touch because it involves that you have the information to prosecute this case.
Yep.
That's
still have it
for you.
Mm-hmm. Still have it to this day. A lot clear footage, and Darcel Clark has the footage too. They have it, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, and they refuse to do anything about it. So there was a victim that was shot, and they refused to do anything about it because I was involved with the case.
Well, this is when the department started shifting to being more about optics. I mean, I brought up the piece of information about Raymond because this is kind of the back end of Bratton's tenure, the beginning of James O'Neill's tenure. And we start to see a shift in the way policing is done in New York City. It starts to be about fitting narratives, trying to eliminate racism, all these other things kind of involved. There's a number of variables at play, eliminating friendliness between cops and people. I mean, there's a lot of political components of your case, but the promotion of James O'Neill to police commissioner represented, like, that was the watershed moment. I talked about the back end of Bratton's tenure, Bratton 2.0, as I like to call it, because we got a very different version of Bratton the second time around. But what did you start to see once James O'Neill started to take over? Because it seems from the outside perspective, like O'Neill was a lot more hell-bent on bending a knee to de Blasio than previous police commissioners. And you started to see this integration between city politics and policing in a way that you probably hadn't seen it in 50 or 60 years since the civil rights movement in the South.
Well, I could honestly say when O'Neill came in, everyone was elated because they thought that, we were going to get the cops cop. Finally, we got a cops cop that's going to do the right thing. But, his hands were pretty much tied because he was dealing with DeBozo. And DeBozo didn't want anything to do with us. He didn't like cops, still don't like police officers. And, I understand that I was the guy on the Ouija board, and they said, hey, let's just throw things at him and see if they could stick. But it wasn't right. It still wasn't right. And
you were definitely the first guy on the Ouija board.
Absolutely, 100%. And, thank God nothing came of it. Because, I don't think people will ever understand those dark days that I had to go through. It was really some dark times. I mean, it's hard to describe. So when I got modified and sent to Manhattan Court, one of the things that I always wanted to do, and we wound up doing while I was there, was anybody that came in there modified, I wanted to speak to them because I wanted to let them know that I've been in your position and I know what you're going through. And I could be a support to help you, talk to you, guide you, let you know what's going on. And I really think that the department in a whole doesn't do enough for cops that are modified, cops that get suspended. You don't know what's going on in people's background and what's going on in their lives. And for them to just turn their back on you, to me, is just absolutely disgusting what they do. That's just my opinion.
You make a lot of sense. I could almost relate to everything except I was never modified or suspended, to the contrary of what other people want to throw out there. So that part I don't know. I don't know because that never happened to me, but I felt like I was because I was going through torture. I was the last thing de Blasio did. I was the last guy that they demonized at the end of his regime. But to hear all of this, so you have 22 cases filed against you that all get dismissed. You were modified. They modified you, threw you in central booking. Meanwhile, you were, I don't know, you still have cases you could solve today. But then there's this thing with this guy, I believe his name is Hernandez, right? And then
Pedro Hernandez.
I don't even want to get into Pedro Hernandez before we get to the subpoena thing, which is a whole nother story. So lead us off with that. What was going on with that?
So Pedro Hernandez was a 16-year-old kid in the Bronx that was probably one of the most violent kids in the Bronx. He has done numerous shootings in the 4-2 precinct, numerous shootings where he was the perpetrator and when he was being shot at. And we were doing we had a pretty strong case in taking this kid out of, removing him from the streets, which we wound up doing. And somehow Manny Gomez got involved with that case and went to these local kids in the street. I don't know if he offered them money. We know now that he offered some kids money, and they started changing up their testimony. Or Terrell forced me to say this, Terrell forced me to say that, and Darcel Clark pretty much got rid of that case. And he became the poster child for juvenile justice for juveniles, when in all actuality, it shouldn't have been. And I always told everyone, a leopard doesn't change his spots.
Of course.
If you Google now where Pedro Hernandez is, he's upstate for attempted murder. As I said, he always would be in jail where he belongs. But, I was the bad guy. I was the one arresting, Pedro Hernandez I had no reason to arrest him. Meanwhile, he's still, and we have other cases with Mr. Hernandez where he should never be getting out of jail, but they don't want to touch the cases. They don't want to touch him at all.
So I want to ask you about this, David, because this was probably one of the craziest things about your case. I showed the NBC article on the screen earlier from back in 2016. Mm-hmm. Then I showed the New York Post article from 2020, which explicitly references the case with Pedro Hernandez. With your cases, you got a lot of variable media coverage. It seemed like when things were going poorly at the beginning of the investigation back in 2016, you were getting a lot of coverage from NBC, not a lot from the New York Post. Later on, the New York Post extensively covered your story from all different angles, and they talked about the cases being thrown out, yet nothing but the sound of birds chirping from NBC and a lot of the other television outlets. So why do you think you got such variable media coverage? Because it seems like there was a narrative behind your case, and it seemed like it depended on what outlets people were consuming, and the outlets were forming an opinion one way or the other, which I also thought was interesting. It seemed like they had an agenda.
Well, I would say the Post started out really hammering me, and then when Eric came in and got involved, he then, and also Pix 11 also, I forgot, we got Pix 11 also was trying to put the nail in the coffin. But then when we started coming out with stuff where they were saying Detective Terrell did this, I wasn't even working that day. Detective Terrell did that. I was in Florida at the time. Detective Terrell did this, nowhere to be found. Detective Terrell did this, he was RDO. You know, so it's like, well, how they had one lawsuit where they said I actually beat someone up in the 4-6 precinct. Never been to the 4-6 in my life. I beat the guy up in the 4-6. I got out of the car. I beat him up, got back in the car, drove back to the 4-2, got in my car, and went over the George Washington Bridge home and relaxed, but never happened. But these were the lawsuits that were being drawn up. But I would say the Post did a great job in cleaning up my my reputation. And that's where I guess we'll get into the Tina Moore thing and a couple of other people. The Daily News, Graham Raymond really did a hammer job on me. It come to find out, you know, he was Scola's knee pad boy, and that's why that was happening. He was out there putting these vicious articles on me, which wasn't true at all. And you know, and eventually the Daily News started doing a little bit of stories, cleaning me up. But again, I was the narrative because everybody hated cops. At that really was, you know, it was the hate cop moment. This was a guy that we can go after. Big black guy, he's angry with the world, he's mad, he's out here arresting people. And that really wasn't the case. And it showed because there was nothing. I never even got in trouble from the department. Never got GO'd for any of the things, allegations that was made against me. Zero. Never, not one time. The only thing I got GO'd about was when this whole, the reason why I really got modified is I had an order protection. My ex-wife had an order protection against me, and I didn't notify operations in 24 hours. I notified them in 26 hours. And that's why I got modified. That's the only, and then they took that for my modification, plus all the other things that was happening, to say, hey, we're going to take them off the streets. And they took me off the streets for 4.5 years, knowing that I did nothing. 4.5 years I was modified. 4.5 years.
I remember this because I remember you being in Central Book, and I was like, when the hell are you going to get out of this?
I remember. I came there.
I walked and said, Dave, this is like Central Booking's beneath you. Your resume, you're so above so many people that I see undeserving of spots because, you know, they're cronies, they're Nepo babies. Why aren't you there? And you were like, well, after you spent years there, I guess, you know, you were like, whatever, because you still have this information about Pedro Hernandez. You still have those other open cases that Darcel Clark refuses to even discuss with you. And her tenure, you know, say what you want, it's up and down, really down in the Bronx. They don't want to call on you, though, for anything. They still want to, like, hold these things against you, even though you've been cleared of everything. And this is what I try to tell people when I discuss my own things. I say, look, Dave is like the poster child of what they do to you. See, Dave walks around and it's like, we know he's innocent, but he's got the asterisk because all that media, that socially engineered narrative, right? Control the narrative, which is that the NYPD likes to do, that follows you for life. Yep. And so somebody asked if you sued. Yeah, I mean, Dave, you did sue, I think twice already.
We sued twice, and Eric is still, you know, we're working on some other things that we're not going to really talk about at this moment. And you know, it's sad because, you know, I always said this is probably the best job I've ever had, but the politics is what makes it suck. Because, you know, nowadays it's not what you do, it's who you know. And I always said that's not fair because there's some great detectives that do great work and will never get promoted. But yet you have people that sit in the puzzle palace that are mommy and daddy boys, and they get promoted and they've done nothing but put their finger in the coffee and stir it for a chief. And that's not right. It's never been right. I've never, ever, I can understand how you have, if you go to 1PP now, you go to each floor, there's units there, and you look at these cops and they're brand new and their shield is brand new. This guy hasn't, there's some cops that have never done one day in the street, but yet they're second grade detectives, first grade detectives. And you have guys that work in the 7.5, 7.3, 103, 113, 4.2, 4.6, all these commands. And these guys do not get promoted. And it's to myself, it's like, why? These detectives been around 10, 15 years solving cases and cannot get promoted. It's the most baffling thing in the world to me. It really is.
This guy had the greatest rise of anyone I've ever seen. Number one rise of all time. You kidding me?
He's David. I imagine you're a football fan. You've seen running backs get tackled. You have 5 guys around them, 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and somehow they lunge forward and get the first down. And you're like, how did they do that? It seems like Kaz Daughtry has mastered the art of somehow falling forward because he's been promoted countless times, and now he has a very prestigious position with ICE, despite having been horrible as deputy mayor for public safety, despite having stolen thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in overtime, and been one of the biggest corrupt cronies in the history of the NYPD, who failed every single promotional exam he ever took. Somehow he's risen to power faster than anyone in the department's history, seemingly so, and he kind of epitomizes that concept that you're talking about.
Right. And, I've always said, it should be an independent person or independent people who can give out this first, second grade to people, special assignment lieutenant, special assignment sergeant. If they're going to hand that out, it should be independent people that do it. It shouldn't be anyone that's in the New York City Police Department, because if you're friends with someone, you're automatically going to get it. Forget the hard worker. The hard worker is not going to get shit because the hard worker is busting his ass, and they say, yeah, keep doing, he's doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing, but we're not going to reward you for it. We're going to reward the best coffee getter who can go downstairs, press the button to the elevator, and come back upstairs. Hey, Chief, here you go, Chief. Here you go. Here's your coffee. Let me stir it for you. Yeah. Oh, let's promote that person. That person's doing a great job. Horrible. It's actually horrible.
You're actually talking about, if we're going to talk about the Crumbs crew, which featured, Eric Adams at the top and all his cronies, that's Tony Herbert picking up the coffee for Eric, but never really achieving anything other than doing that. I do want to say this. You can't say Jack, he's stealing overtime, because if you remember who his boss was authorizing people to abuse the system and then trying to get that money back through intimidation and stuff. So there's a whole thing behind the overtime again. And him handing it out to this guy is no different the way that certain chief was handing it out to other people. And eventually he got caught for that. And we have yet to see how that one plays out. I want to show you this one, Dave. Speaking of Tina Moore, she's in the chat right now. She said, Land of Broken Toys. Hi, Dave. And, yeah. And also, and Quatisha Epps is in the chat. Says, Jack, preach. So since I see Tina in the chat, and I did bring her up, Dave, what happened with this subpoena stuff? Because it went from you're the test subject for something where they used the freaking Patriot Act on you, and then they gravitate towards Tina Moore and use it on her.
So apparently I was at 1PP, and Tina Moore has done a lot of articles in regards to Dave Terrell, good or bad, whatever you want to call it.
It's a job.
And we developed a good relationship. So the fact that, Tina Moore works for the media, I can't be friends with Tina Moore. So we're going to run your records and see how much conversation you've been having with Tina Moore. Oh. And I'm like, so, me and Eric, we go to this GO and they're like, we have your phone records. Do you know who this person is? Do you know who this person is? I'm like, yeah, that's Tina Moore. That's this person. This is Sean. This is Tom. And they're like, well, why do you speak to them? Because I can speak to them. I can speak to anyone as long as it's not regarding the NYPD. And we'll get to Sal when obviously we get to that moment. But that was their biggest thing is, why are you talking to her? Why can't I talk to her? Why can't I can talk to Jack Stern.
Slow down for a second there, because that's actually a key component of your story here. The NYPD highly discourages members of service from talking to the media, yet DCPI and executive members of the top of the NYPD are often the ones leaking the most amount of information because they want to control the narrative. So that way of thinking and that line of thought is wholly unfair. And as a result, Dave, I'm not sure if you know this, but media outlets have their favorites in terms of who they're giving information to, right? Or
Absolutely.
who they're speaking to within the department. In other words, if NBC, I'm just using them for demonstrative purposes here, if NBC is giving you favorable coverage, you're going to give NBC the exclusives, you're going to give them the first information. But as a result, even though NBC is covering you with great detail, they're not exactly being honest and objective. And that's problematic because the public isn't getting accurate information. That's a chain of command that most people who haven't been in the media don't know about.
Right. And my thing is, if I'm talking to Tina Moore in regards to something that's going on in my personal life, that's my business. I could talk to whoever I choose to speak to. The job wants you to be a robot where they control everything that you do. And when you go against that narrative, now you become enemy of the state. But I really don't give a damn. And I never will. And you can't tell me who I could speak to on my personal phone. I don't use your shitty job phone for anything. I never use that job phone. I think it sucks. I don't use it, never used it. So who I talk to on my personal phone is my business. And I just never understood that. And for you to go get my personal records to see who I'm talking to, what crime have I committed with Tina Moore that you can go Google, get a subpoena for my records? It was unbelievable. And then Eric stepped in, and actually de Blasio actually talked about it. And that's something we could probably eventually bring Eric in, and he could tell you exactly, because de Blasio was not happy about that whole situation when he found out that the department did that. And he said under his regime, he never ever wanted to hear that again. But then,
isn't that funny?
Mm-hmm.
Because not even 2 years later, here they come saying I'm doing narcotics because I'm a friend of Roger Stone, and that's how they got their little subpoena when they never had me on any kind of narcotics or crime in general. So they continue this to this day, actually. And this is what people, I mentioned this before, this is what's called Administrative Code 14-137, where they have, it's not a court, it's some commissioner that signs this piece of paper that looks, it's fancy, it's very fancy the way they write it, that they are looking at this department member or media member and says in there, we need to look at their records for whatever nonsense it is, but you can't do this unless you go to a real court, to a real judge, like a warrant, and say, I need this person's records because I have evidence of whatever, and you have to show them up. I mean, Dave, you've done this over and over again in real life when you had real criminals. Yeah. How did this go from that's supposed to be how they do it to now they got you and Tina Moore's record, and he said the Patriot Act. I don't even know how you would be labeled a domestic terrorist. You working for the NYPD. How is that possible?
Sal, as you can see, Eric's comments, it never went any further after Eric got involved in that. I still never even got a finding from that. We don't even know what happened from it. We still don't know.
They're looking at your records and they're dissecting your life when they don't have anything to go on. You were never alleged to have done a crime, and neither was Tina Moore.
Ever.
Why are they looking at Tina's records? She's not even a cop.
Unbelievable, the stuff that these guys get away with. And that's why I always said they should just completely disband IAB, because everyone that's listening to this site right now, listening to Sal, if anyone can put up any major arrest that IAB has ever made, please post it.
Show it.
Please, I need to know, because IAB does nothing. All they do is hurt cops, and they have their own personal agenda. And some of these chiefs use it as their own playhouse to come after cops. I'm looking for anyone that can post any major arrest that any IAB has ever made in the last 10 years that we were like, oh my God, IAB really did a great case here. They worked this case to death.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it. I'm
So
looking for
the
it.
problem with IAB is it functions as a corporate HR department instead of a branch of the NYPD that actually conducts investigations.
And you said it right, Jack. You said it right, because they do absolutely nothing, and they go after cops who they have personal agendas for. Personal agendas. This is, and we're going to get into obviously to the other situation, but here it is. You have this big 350 Hudson, beautiful building. You have all of these people in there. What are they doing? What are they really doing?
There's a Christmas tree I heard that they had everyone's face on it.
Oh, it's a Christmas tree, and they have a group chat.
Yes.
They have a big, large group chat where they discuss everyone's cases, and they talk about who they want to hammer and who they don't want to hammer in that big, large group chat. Oh, by the way, that I have. So, if we need to get into that, we'll get into that too. They have their large group chat that they discuss everyone's cases with. So, it's
legal, Dave. I don't think that's legal to be discussing everyone's business on, especially if you're one IAB to the next, the one detective to supervise. I don't know.
Right, but if you're a cop, if you're Dave Terrell or you're someone else that does it, then it's a big problem. But they can discuss your cases on a IAB group chat. They can do it, but we can't have any group chats whatsoever. So it's amazing how boy, let me tell you, we have a lot of time left on the show, and maybe it's so much more we're going to discuss in regards to this, because it's amazing how they're the biggest hypocrites in the world, but yet they have one of the largest group chats in the department where they talk about everyone's case that they dislike and how they want to hammer that person and how they don't want to hammer someone else.
That's insane.
I know. And the revelations about Miguel Iglesias and Paul Saraceno in regards to the Jeffrey Madry scandal kind of shined a light about how hierarchical the system is. In other words, if you're above assistant chief, you can pretty much get away with doing whatever you want, and whatever you're accused of becomes public knowledge. But if you're lower on the totem pole, then you're going to be used as a pawn, and you're going to be exploited, and everyone's going to know about all your criminal misdeeds. I'm not justifying criminal misdeeds for police officers or sergeants or whatever, but the bottom line is there's rules for one set of people and rules for another set, and it's based on your rank, which isn't fair. And
right.
It defeats the whole purpose of the department as well. And having an internal affairs bureau, especially, Dave, when the FBI is raiding Jeffrey Madry's case, the FBI is involved in many larger investigations. Remember the Jeremy Reichberg case from a couple years ago?
Yes.
Right? So it seems like IAB is not only so bad at doing the job that they were hired to do, but they're now being undermined by federal agencies, which is even more problematic because now the department is legally responsible for all of this.
Right. And I've always said, and I'll keep saying, I'm a huge advocate. They should just let DOI do all investigations for the agency. DOI does it for corrections. Why can't they do it for NYPD? Put those cops back in the street. Put those lazy cops in IAB who do absolutely nothing back on the streets. Because a lot of them can't be in the streets because they're scared of the streets. So this is their only way of being relevant, is by hurting cops. Put their ass back in the streets. Let's see what they do out in the streets.
I can't believe it. I'd be honest, I did not know that these guys are that stupid to have their little WhatsApp chats and they're talking internal affairs, because that would make it very... a lot of cases have to get thrown out, because even yours, the latest one, because you're talking about pertinent facts of a case that's supposed to not be disclosed to other members of whatever other internal affairs inspection. You guys are like, this is why they had that group chat with the Bronx, what was that, Bronx North and Manhattan North and all that, whatever they're doing there with narcotics. What are you guys doing? I don't get what's the obsession with the WhatsApp. That's been something I talk about all the time, where you can't discuss department business and official business and cases because that becomes a legal issue down the road. The rubber's going to meet the road here. I mean, the soccer mom, you got to get under things under control. I mean, yeah, Joel Ramirez in the chat says, how about me? I'm part of a grand larceny. He's another one that they had involved in the key, wasn't even on the case, didn't know anything about it. He's home as a lieutenant home, and whatever happened without his knowing of. But they try to blame him for it, by the way. Of course, that's another ongoing thing. I mean, he's retired now, but I mean, Watisha Ebb says that part, Dave, and I saw she said this one here. Let's not leave out the WhatsApp and Signal chats that certain MOS have on their department cell phones.
Yeah, she was victimized by that personally as well, because look at the moving of all the text messages between her and Jeffrey Madry, which were not only put on social media, but in pretty much every group chat of current and retired active members of service.
Look what she just said. She said, nope, DOI is MOS there as well that give the heads up to cases. So,
but there you have it.
But maybe the DOI is a little bit more honest than the internal affairs.
And I would say so, Jack, and I would say I would agree with you a lot more, because this department, everyone knows someone in the higher up. So if I'm a CO and I really want you to go after a cop, all I have to do is make a call, chief to chief, and say, hey, you know what? Go after this guy. I don't like him. And, it's not fair. Because just because someone doesn't like you doesn't mean you should be destroyed. Your career should be ruined because a chief or a captain or whatever, so supervisor don't like you. I mean, it happens. And that's why I say they should always rotate cops too. Cops shouldn't be in the same command for 20 plus years. I've always said that. It should be a 5 to 10 year rotation where you go somewhere else. You shouldn't have to be in a heavy command your whole career while mommy and daddy boys work in the 1st, the 5th, the 7th, the 9th. And shit is easy for them. Shit is easy, let's be honest. It's real easy compared to somebody that's working Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South, Queens North. Everybody should be able to rotate within their borough and go to a different command for a fresher look. I think it'll give cops a little more motivation to probably work too, because it's a different environment. You can't work in the 7-7, 4-2, 4-6, 4-8. These commands are heavy. It takes a toll on you. That's why a lot of cops, after they retire, they die. Because of the stress and everything, because the department doesn't give two shits. They pretend like they do. They come on the TV and tish, oh, you can't mess with my guys and this. But what are you doing for your guys? What are you doing? What are you doing for your guys? They do absolutely nothing. And it's sad. And, for me, I got to see it firsthand because, there's a lot of modified cops throughout the city, throughout the court sections that they put everywhere. And it's really a waste of taxpayers' dollars, Jack, that they have these guys modified for 3.5 years, getting checks, but not really doing police work.
No.
I mean, the taxpayers really don't know that. There's some cops that are literally sitting in central booking right now and here's the best part, Jack. Let me tell you and Sal, here's the best part. They put cops in central booking who have no prisoner contact. But yet they get 50 hours overtime every month, 40 hours overtime. Think about that. So you're in central booking where they're prisoners, right? And you have no prisoner contact. But yet we're going to reward you and give you 40 hours a month, every month with no prisoner contact. There are people that literally can't go downstairs, who they just leave upstairs in a room to just get papers, who can't have prisoner contact. Why are they there? Why? What's the purpose of them being there?
And they're being protected, out of sight, out of mind, plenty of overtime.
Well, you can't do that.
Dangerous job.
But Jack, think about this.
Do that.
You're restricted with no prisoner contact, right?
Yeah.
No prisoner contact, but yet they put you in central booking where there's nothing but prisoners. Every place you go in central booking, you are interacting with a prisoner, whether he's cuffed or uncuffed. The bottom line is he's a prisoner. Why is that individual there?
And that's a liability for the department too, because you have someone who's restricted. They're not supposed to be interacting with prisoners, and that's exactly what they're doing. So in a criminal case, that's something that could come up in the proceedings.
Right. I mean, it's if you look at it, and then you got so many people who just don't want to be there whatsoever. They just don't want to be there, but yet they're there. And you have some cops that are just sitting there modified 3 years, 2 years. And some of the cases that I've heard, and I will never disclose any of their cases, it's just such, if it's administrative, put these guys back in the street. Put them back on the street. Like you're wasting taxpayers' dollars. Get these cops back on the street. They say there's a shortage of cops. You know where they are? They're sitting in Central Brook and Quartermaster, the Pound. They're everywhere because IAB don't want to just close out these shitty cases that you have. Some of these cases are so tedious. It's just like, are you kidding me?
Dave, you don't want to disclose the other half because those IAB guys keep putting in for overtime. Oh, I'm working on this case that's 4 years old.
It's just like, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? And then, you're dealing with prisoners and, this is why you get a lot of misarrangements because you have people there that don't know what's going on. Then you have the wrong prisoner then they want to suspend you. But then you have cops that just don't want to be there and don't want to learn it at all. I mean, it's very complex, but you have all these modified cops. You have cops in Viper. You have cops that, what are we doing? Why does it take 3 years, but it takes 1 hour to suspend Detective Terrell? But it takes 3 years to figure out everything that you want to figure out. Explain it to me, Jack. I'm waiting, Jack.
Dave,
I'm waiting.
I don't have an explanation.
You see us in the chat. Emilio Rodriguez, who's the guy. Emilio Rodriguez is, I guess your sound is off. Emilio Rodriguez in the chat says, "Look at me, I'm crazy because I wouldn't have stood up against. I stood up against corruption in 3-4." That is the lieutenant is in the chat live from Texas. He's the guy suing Castillo. Just so you
I don't know if I lost you guys. Hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, yeah. I can't hear you guys though.
I don't know what
Bear
happened.
with me 1 second.
And Eric just said he is the retired. He's the retired.
Yeah, and to give some context here, Castillo or Rodriguez deserves a lot of credit for standing up to Castillo because Castillo came and told him, we're gonna disguise Edward Caban. We're gonna disguise James Caban as Edward Caban, and everyone's gonna salute him. And Rodriguez was saying, "Wait a second, we're not doing that." He was also the one who whistleblowed the fact that the 311 complaints were being marked as resolved 3 minutes after they were fired because people running those bars were hooked up by members of the department. So good for Rodriguez. He did real police work in that case, and he tried to expose the truth, and he got railroaded. Unfortunately,
Dave, you know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you watched WWE, but back in
SummerSlam
1990, the Hart Foundation faced demolition. So there was 3 members, but only 2 that you saw. So they kept switching Axe with Smash. Yes, so that's what you have with the spots. You keep switching Eddie for James and vice versa. Demolition. They're doing it. That's what was going on. Oh, he's coming in. Well, it's the police commission. No, it's not. But they look the same. Oh, wait. Is that really Eddie? I don't know. And this guy, Castillo, was running. He's running the gambit with these guys. I mean, it's ridiculous. This was it. SummerSlam 90. The 2 demolition fought the Hart Foundation.
Yep. Axe and Smash.
One guy under the ring would keep coming in for the other guy. So Axe and Smash rotated, and the referee acted like they didn't know because they had the same face paint. It's hysterical. That's what these 2 guys are doing. Who's the real police commissioner? I don't know. They both look the same, and Castillo was all involved with that. But hey, he's a freaking chief now. He's a chief. He went from deputy inspector to chief, which is unheard of the way being involved with those people. I mean,
which proves that the same people who are getting hooked up under Adams are getting hooked up under Mamdani. We've talked a lot, Terrell, on this show about the 3-card Mamdani and about how the current mayor talked about how he was cleaning up the police department and changing everything. The only difference between Mamdani and Adams is that Adams was way too hands-on and he was way too involved. Mamdani's not involved at all, and he's kind of pawned off all the responsibilities to Tish. Yet the same exact things are going on. The same people are getting promoted. The same people are being enabled, and nothing's changed.
Well, you know what, Jack, like Mamdani likes to do. You remember when he did this to the guy up by his house? Let me do this to him. Oh, hold on a second.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I remember he did that. Let him come back on. So he's talking about.
If you can, I forgot the guy's name. Mamdani, if you can hear me, you need to speak to people who can do the right thing for you and really get the department in the right channels. Because there's a lot of cops that feel the same way that I feel. And the nonsense that goes on in IAB is an absolute atrocity. And you want to talk about waste of taxpayers' dollars? Why don't you do an audit of how many cops that are modified right now with bullshit cases that IAB is not even touching or probably not even investigating? And we're going to get into that because some of the cases, they don't even investigate. We know they just leave the file on the desk and they just let it sit there for years at a time. And they're wasting people's and taxpayers' time because they do such shitty investigations, that group one, and they're led by, Papa Smurf and the knee pad boys, and they're not doing anything whatsoever.
You got Hansy, you got the frat house over there in IAB with their footsies over there with Thompson and DiBartolo.
I call him Papa Smurf because he's 5'4". That's why.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. But talking about optics here, Mamdani talks about on the campaign trail, he wants to create a $1 billion Department of Community Safety, despite there being a massive budget deficit. We all knew that wasn't feasible to begin with. Obviously, he needed to appease the loony lefty constituents that were voting for him. Okay, fine. You're off the campaign trail now. Then you insist we need to create an office for community safety where pretty much all it involves is a reconfiguration of resources. Dave, I think those resources would be much better allocated creating an independently affiliated, internal affairs bureau that's not operating within the NYPD, something that does independent investigations and things that lead to actual police reform instead of creating these offices, which are just for show and tell and dog and pony shows. It's not effective.
You know what, Jack? I agree with you, but something needs to be done in regards to internal affairs because they use that as their personal pulpit to destroy people's and ruin people's career, and even after retirement, still ruin your life, not giving you a good guy letter, not giving you your HR 218. There's a lot of things that they do that's not fair whatsoever, and there's no one to hold them accountable whatsoever. There's no accountability for what they do with partial investigations, half investigation. We're going to get into obviously our situation with myself and Sal, but just think about a lot of people that's in my position that don't have an opportunity to come on the Sal Greco Show or don't have an opportunity to speak what's going on. See, I have zero fear because what's happened to me in 2016 has pretty much let me be where it showed me that no one gives a shit about you because people rather talk about a lie. See, the lie is always good to talk about because you can talk about a lie can spread forever, but no one wants to hear the truth. So they can continue with the lie about Detective Terrell. He did this, he did that. The lie was good. But then when the truth came out, that's why you didn't hear anything from NBC. That's why you didn't hear anything from the New York Times. That's why you didn't hear anything from all these other outlets. And the only one that really stood on business was the New York Post. But this is what happens when you put people in power that can control a narrative. Like, just think about if they were to really if we had an outside independent investigation to look at some of the things that IAB is put in these group chats, you would be shocked. They're not supposed to be talking about people's cases. They're not supposed to talk about people's cases at all. It's supposed to be private. Let me tell you, I walked out of my last one on March 23rd. I didn't get 2 blocks from 350 Hudson, and everyone knew I was suspended already.
That would be you getting I don't
2
know.
blocks. I didn't get 2 blocks up the street before I could even. And I'm getting calls. You got suspended. I'm like, well, damn. How the hell you know? There was no orders down there.
As someone who used to work at the news station located at 345 Hudson Street, let me just tell you, Dave, the news was spreading around there like a wildfire too.
Yes. And
it's like middle school telephone. One person gives their variation of the story. It gets told to another person, slightly doctored. By the time it's to the last person, the story's been totally altered. That's part of the problem with the news.
There's no accountability for them whatsoever. Zero.
Dave, I want to ask you one other thing before we get to the main event, which is what happened in the latest thing that happened here. Do you remember the smoker with this guy Rivera from Highway?
Yes, Christopher Rivera.
Why don't you explain to people? Because there's a history, and actually someone on TikTok, by the way, asked me to ask you about this because they knew a while ago. People don't know the smokers where you're supposed to be 2 cops supposed to fight and make a big deal. But I remember when they call internal affairs on each other because that's a scheme in itself. These guys are all big mouths. Some of them might be a little short, or little people that have big mouths, bigger than their body, and then they run and hide if you get confronted. So there was a guy that you challenged to smoke. This guy Rivera.
I'm going to tell you how this went. So I'm heading to the 4-2 precinct, and I'm passing the Bronx court. This guy pulls me over, and he at first I didn't even know why he pulled me over, but he said I had went around him. But I mean, we're only going like 10 miles per hour is traffic. So he pulls me over. He asked me for my license, registration. I show him my ID. He was a highway cop at the time. He goes, "That's not sufficient. I asked you for your license and registration." Now I'm showing him my shield and ID. He said that wasn't sufficient. So I'm like, this guy, I already know where this is going. He has me on a perp stop. He has the car angled, the lights on. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? Like, this guy has me sitting here. So he goes to his car. He comes back. He goes, maybe he comes back maybe 7-8 minutes later. He comes back and he goes, "Just remember who's in charge." Just like that.
Oh.
So I said, okay. So I get to the car. Now, literally, the 4-2 precinct is maybe 2 to 3 blocks away from the Bronx courthouse. So he said, "Remember, the uniform guy is always in charge." That's what he said. And I'm like, I didn't even know where that came from. But I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go back to the 4-2. I get dressed. And the ICO called me and said, "Hey, T, can you come pick me up from court?" So I'm like, okay. So I'm dressed. I go to the Bronx court to pick him up. But who do I see at the Bronx court? I see Christopher Rivera, the detective, that the cop that pulled me over. So, I go to him and I said, I really don't like the way you were talking to me during that car stop. But now, we're both in uniform. Since you think you're so tough, how about me and you in a smoker? And he goes, me and you in a smoker? I decline. And I said, well, you were talking all of that, how about me and you in a smoker? He goes, I decline. So literally, I pick the ICO up. We go back to the command. And I would say probably 2 to 3 days later, he says, "We have to go to IAB immediately. They're want to GO you." And I'm like, "Well, GO me for what?" He said, "You threatened a cop." I had no idea what he was talking about because that was so beyond me to even think about that incident. And I always thought they were talking about another guy because it was Tarasi and Terrell. Tarasi's his tax number was 931-315 and mine was 316. And sometimes I would get notified for traffic court because he was a highway cop because he would write his 5s and it looks like a 6. So I'm thinking maybe it was him. So when the ICO told me the situation, I'm like, are you kidding me? Did you see the video? Rivera called and said he was in fear for his life. That's why he told IAB he was in fear for his safety and that he never been, he was scared. But I'm in uniform, he's in uniform. So what are you scared at? So, going back to 2020, when we go to the trial room, one of their charges was threats to an MOS. And I'm saying, well, how could I threaten an MOS when you have everyone asking to go to smokers? If you go on YouTube right now and put in smoker talk, you have cops challenging, you have inspectors challenging other people to smokers. Yep. And they told me in the GO that there's a protocol to invite someone to a smoker. There's no patrol guide procedure or personnel order for that.
What type of nonsense is that? Is this some?
If I'm lying, I'm dying. Everything is in the record. Everything is on the record. They told me, they said, you have to have, it's an order that you're supposed to go by. What order? You invite someone to a smoker. If they decline, they decline. But, at that point, it was weird. So they got me for threats to a MOS, failure to notify operations. And this is the best one out of all my charges. You ready for this, Jack? This is the best one from all my charges. A light load. So they said I had 15 in the magazine. I didn't have 1 in the chamber.
What?
That was one of my charges, a light load. Hey, everything I'm telling you can look up. My light
15 bullets in the magazine, and that was considered a light load?
Yep. I had 15 and I didn't have 1 in the chamber. And Eric can attest to it. And the biggest question was, I had went to the range like 2 weeks before I had got modified, and maybe I just forgot to do it. but they were like, oh, we got to check to make sure you didn't fire a shot. And I'm like, huh? So that's what they got me for, a light load. 15 in the magazine, 1 in the chamber.
Well, they'll slap you over the wrist for anything and everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, if you're in bad standing with the department, Dave, and I know this even as an outsider, they'll manufacture something to get mad about if they don't have something organically. And that's kind of the sad part about your situation. You were doing your job. You were doing it at a very high level, but because you were involved in a situation that looked, optically speaking, bad on camera. Remember, I said optically speak. I didn't say in actuality.
Right.
I need to differentiate between the two. But because you were in the wrong optically, they decided they were going to try and pile drive you into the ground, which is the most unfair part about your case. And also, people need to realize what they see on camera almost never tells an entire story. So while things might not look good, you don't really have much context to what was actually taking place. That's the thing that even CCRB investigators need to realize as well.
Well, they railroaded you with this thing, right? With this BS. But so you ended up what? You had to take, how many days they try to take you?
Well, they originally asked for a year and 30.
Get out of here.
We said no. Then they gave me a year. O'Neill personally handwrote this letter. It was a year and 35. And he added the 5 days because of the fact that he was called the mayor's puppet. So he was angry about that. So he added an additional 5 days to that. So I sat there modified for four years. 4 years for that. That's what I was modified for. Not for anything in regards to what was in the newspaper. Failure to notify operations in a timely manner. 27 hours, not 24. Threats to an MOS, because I invited him to a smoker, and a light load.
No, light load.
That was 4 years. 4 years of taxpayers' dollars, me sitting there for 4 years. With no overtime, by the way.
What happened to Mr. Rivera?
So Mr. Rivera went to annual police week down in DC and got arrested for domestic down there. So as IB, I guess, continues to do an investigation on Mr. Rivera, they find out that he also lied about an R&P accident that occurred that was on the dash cam. And Mr. Rivera got terminated from the department. But here's the best part. I forgot to even bring that back. I'm glad you brought that up. So knowing that Mr. Rivera obviously lied, and that's one of the biggest no-nos in the department, lying in a GO will get you terminated.
Yep.
He was able to testify against me in my trial.
Oh God, how is this allowed? I mean, what is this, a clown show?
I know Eric is listening, and he could testify. He was allowed to testify, even though they knew he lied in an official GO that was being terminated. He was allowed to testify.
It's like Jeffrey Madry being promoted to chief of department after interfering with a departmental investigation. It's like, if you're going to let the inmates violate the rules of the prison, you can't promote them to chief warden. Like, that's not the way that this should work.
Yep.
Now I say, so that was definitely, I had to bring that up because these things people should know. So now you know why Dave was even modified in his career. It wasn't for anything you read in the paper. It's for
nothing.
this who's a criminal. Okay. So in the last few months, David, because there's a lot of chatter, we have a certain one in particular, but I don't want to make mention of them, but we'll just say Vanilla Midget said that you got in trouble because of me. They don't know anything. Okay. A lot of people don't know what happened exactly. Tell us what you can about the final months and what occurred with you in the police department and what led to you now becoming retired.
So I'm working regular day, March 23rd, March 26th, 2026, working in the police department, regular day, doing what I normally do. And I get notified that you have to go to IB forthwith. So I'm like, okay. So originally the GO was supposed to be on Broadway. So I get to Broadway. It was supposed to be in regards to, I think it was I actually had one GO that day, which turned into two. But that GO was on Broadway. It was supposed to be something very quick, fast. And then it turned into, you have to go to group one. So I'm like, group one. I'm like, what the hell is going to group one for? So then, I start making a little calls around, and they're telling me group one only deals with supervisors. So I'm like, well, maybe it's in regards to a supervisor that got in trouble or whatever the situation is. They need me to interview me in regards to that. So that one was supposed to be on, that one was supposed to be on Broadway. Literally an hour later, they're saying, no, you have to report to 350 Hudson. So they changed the location. They changed the location of my original GO that was supposed to be right up the block from Manhattan Court. And then they changed to 350 Hudson. And I'm like, well, this is weird. So, I go with the delegate, the union attorney, and I'm still perplexed about this whole thing. So they come in and, they say they're doing an 18-month investigation in regards to misuse of computer. So I'm like, misuse of computer? Like, what the fuck are they doing? I'm like, I'm baffled. I'm in my head, I'm like, I don't know what the hell these guys are talking about. Yeah. Yes. So they come in, Lieutenant Jackson and Sergeant RCO and some new, I don't even know this guy's name, some new inspector that was at IAB came in, and they come in with all these big piles of paper, and, they put it on the desk, and we're here to talk to you about computer misuse. And I'm like, computer misuse? I'm going crazy because I'm like, I know I didn't misuse the computer. So of course they read I guess they read out the paperwork, and it comes to find out that someone in Manhattan Court section dropped a dime saying that I have relationships with Sal Greco, that I'm giving Sal Greco information. Oh. Right. So they start the GO, and they present me with a 61. And on the 61, it says rape. So I'm like, look, and they're like, do you know what this is? I'm like, yeah, it says rape. And they're like, do you know like anything about this? And I'm like, no, I don't know anything about it. And they're like, well, you printed it out. So I'm like, no, they didn't say I printed it out. They say you looked it up. And I'm like, I look up 61s all the time. In Manhattan Central Booking, that's all you're going to do is you're constantly dealing with prisoners. So it's not clicking to me. It's not even dawning upon me. Then they kept asking me, do you know about this? And I'm like, oh, I look at it. I said, oh, I see rape at One Police Plaza. So I'm like, oh, yeah. They're like, well, why did you look it up? And I'm like, well, I just thought it was weird that somebody got raped at One Police Plaza and nobody talked about it. So I looked it up. So then they say, well, did I give the information to anyone? And I'm like, no, I didn't give it to anyone. So then they're saying, well, did I give the information to Sal Greco? And I'm like, I didn't give information to Sal Greco. He already knew about it. He told me about it, and that made me look it up to see if it actually happened.
So in other words, they accused you of leaking information, and that's why they were prosecuting you.
Correct. So they said that I leaked the information to Sal, but I can't leak anything to Sal if he already knows about it. He told me about it, and I looked it up. And I just found it, like I told him, I found it baffling that One Police Plaza is the Eiffel Tower for the police department, but yet a rape occurred at 1PP and no one knew about it. I thought that was like damn, holy shit, somebody actually got raped in 1PP and no one knew about it? Like no one. Like to this day, I don't even think, well, they know now, but
I know.
That was the biggest thing, that it was a rape that occurred in One Police Plaza, and I looked it up. And they said, well, you looked it up 3 times or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't think I would look it up 3 times, but okay, I looked it up 3 times. So then they started asking me like questions about, well, why did you look this person up? Why did you look that person up? But what they're not understanding is anytime that something happened in Central Booking, anytime a cop got arrested, anything that would happen there, we get a phone call. Obviously, we got to, try to move along a cop that got arrested. You don't want him sitting in Central Booking the whole day. So we would move along those cases probably pretty fast. Well, why'd you look this up? Well, I have to look it up to see if the cop is ready. If his case is ready, then we can bring him down. We have a cop. We don't put cops in a cell. We put them in a different room, and we isolate them from, obviously, the general public because of who they are, and obviously it's a courtesy from us. And what was funny was IAB would actually call me when they have arrests for me to do the same thing that I've been doing. So it was baffling that you're calling me, asking me, why am I running this and one, but you're not asking me about the ones that you asked me to look up and to take care of cases for you. And it was baffling. And they would come in and out of a room, and it wound up being a 4-hour GO about Sal Greco. Are you friends with Sal Greco? How long have you known Sal Greco? Are you going to continue speaking to Sal Greco? Yeah, I'm going to. I've known him for 10 years. Wow.
And these things are nobody's business because they're not relevant or pertinent to the case.
Also, I'm not a criminal. Never been accused of anything. I've never been tried for anything. I've never been convicted for anything. So I don't know where they're coming up. Why are you going to continue talking to Sal Greco? So let's clear that all up.
Right. So it was just, the whole thing was just, well, so they have my phone records there again. And, it's like, well, we see that you had a conversation with him here. And I'm like, yeah, I speak to him all the time. Like, what do you guys talk about? We don't talk about the job all the time. And it's really none of your business what I talk to him about. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand. Like, I couldn't understand. So they kept coming in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And, I realized what was going on here. This was a complete hit piece by Papa Smurf, because his feelings got hurt because Sal exposed the fact that he was sleeping with his driver, and anybody that was friends with Sal or have an affiliation with Sal, this is what was going to happen, because that's what I was told, that anytime that anybody that had affiliation with Sal Greco, this was going to happen to them. Because they don't like what Sal.
It was guilt by association then.
Correct.
Guilt by association, yet there's no crimes that have been alleged here. First of all, I never got called by any of these, not that they would have the guts to do so, but if there's a problem that they're saying that now the actual 4090 unusual occurrence report says that I spoke to you, meaning you can never have leaked anything to me. So the whole thing contradicts itself. But this was something that I had already got wind of, and not just me. But why is it that they're saying I do this? You did not leak anything to me, and whatever I discuss with you is between me and you, because there have been some hard times, not only for you, Dave, but for me. I mean, I've been chased by virtually every 3-letter agency there is for nothing. So what we discuss is what we discuss amongst ourselves. But I think that even if I had mentioned what now we know is true, because they admitted it, I think that's a workplace hazard that you have the right to know about, because you literally walk across the street to One Police Plaza almost every day from Central Booking. So don't you think it's your business and the business of all the employees that a felony crime occurred in a building where you're supposed to feel safe? I mean, you all work there. Isn't that a workplace hazard, Dave?
I think it is, and according to the law, it is. But according to the NYPD, no one should know about this. This should be the biggest kept secret. So you have women and men that are in that building all the time, and they shouldn't know about a rape that occurred in the building. You don't have to give specific names or anything, but just let faculty and staff members aware that this did occur in the building. So I didn't understand what the big problem was in the first place when they were, and I'm like, well, what's the big deal? It wasn't like I printed it out and I gave a copy to Sal. I didn't do any of that. Nope. I didn't leak it to anyone at all. So I just didn't understand. So, they come in and out of a room 3 or 4 times. We leave the room, come back 2 or 3 times. And, they're like, well, as per Chief Thompson, you're going to be suspended this date, this time. I'm like, okay, no problem. No problem.
Thompson. He's done such a stellar job. Ask Captain Bowen. What's the latest one he did with Gurley? This guy's quite a character, but he's got a lot to hide in his own office.
Well,
I don't know about what's going on in your office, buddy.
Yeah, we all know what's going on in the office, which will be later exposed, or maybe on another Sal Greco show when I come back. There's a lot of things that he's doing in there that it's going to be exposed very soon. And then, at that point, I said, I got suspended for the 30 days. And, I was speaking to Eric, and he's like, why don't you consider, look at your numbers and see if you. So I looked at my numbers and I said, you know what? I'll make more staying at home than going into that place. And it was never, ever going to be the same going back to central booking, especially knowing that, after finding out now that we know who it is that leaked the information to Internal Affairs, that I can't even look at these people and I didn't want nothing to do with the department no more, Jack. It was very disturbing that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm saying to myself, here it is. I worked 24 years, never missed one day of work, never went sick in my life, never. Perfect attendance. 24 years, perfect attendance. Been out in the streets, hustling and bustling. I thought I did a good job in central booking. I thought I helped a lot of cops out. And this is the best that you have, is the fact that you're saying that I leaked. Let me actually look at this thing. What does it say here?
Disseminated information.
Disseminating the department computer database for unofficial and non-department related purposes.
Here it is. I have it up on the screen.
You have it up right there, Jack.
Yeah, so the department alleges that this conduct constituted unauthorized database access and dissemination of confidential information. So pretty much what they're saying is, even if you were telling the truth, Dave, because you violated departmental guidelines, you're now all of a sudden in the wrong, which is totally illegal and unfair, because you're allowed to talk to people, you're allowed to talk about information, and you have a personal life which enables you to have discussions with whoever you want.
Jack, it's not true. That's not true. What they're alleging is not, and they never called me. They never asked me about any of this. Let's just put this out there too, Dave. I mean, they do all of this for you, but they don't worry about the real corruption going on there. And on top of it, Dave, they kept, I guess, insinuating that you were giving me all these things, but yet when you were suspended, I had orders. I have all kinds of stuff. By the way, I have something that's we'll put this, something that would 100% clear the nonsense that you keep hearing about from the Joe Cop crowd and that other crowd of the other cast of characters about Epps that, I don't know. I might have to release something in regards to that. So I don't get my things from Dave Terrell. I never did. Dave was always my friend. But you guys went ahead and did this. And then, of course, we have a bald vanilla midget that ran out there running his big mouth because he's a little guy and lying that you are fired because of me or whatever the case is. When, I got something right here with Joel Ramirez saying this, and this is true. How about when IEB called Central Bookings and needed your help for the Asian cop that did the drive-by shooting in New Jersey? I guess when you did that, that doesn't mean you didn't do anything wrong, I guess, right?
Absolutely not. Right, because it's doing for them. Well, as long as you're doing for them, you're in great hands. And that was Group 1, by the way, just so you know, the same Group 1 that suspended me. And, I put my papers in, and, they give you 30 days because I'm Tier 2A, Jack, just so you know. So when you're 2A, you just can't leave. You have to give 30 days notice that you want to leave. And then you have a chance to go to the trial room to obviously defend myself. So those 30 days passed and nothing came about. Nothing.
And they weren't gonna call with me being the main witness because I can easily tell you that never happened. But
right. So,
the assumptions are big here, Dave. They've assumed so much and yet had nothing in their hands the whole time.
Yeah. So the sad thing about it is, so you retire. Clearly you don't get a good guy letter. You don't get the HR 218. You get nothing. So basically, I did 24 years, and this is the repayment for someone that gave 24 years of dedicated service to the department, despite the shit that they put me through. This is what they do. But you can still, for those that are listening, still get your HR 218. You still can get all of that stuff. Contrary to what they'd like to tell you, the unions and everyone else who think they know law and know everything, that you can't get your HR 218, you can't get your armed secure license. You can still do all of that without the department giving it to you. But I felt it was well-deserved for me and other people that did 20 years. If you did 20 years of service and you collect a pension check, you should get a good guy letter. To me, a good guy letter is you not completing 20 years of service. That's a good guy. You got fired, 20 years of service, and if you receive a pension, you should get a good guy letter. Simple as that.
I agree.
If not, they don't have enough to not give you a good guy letter. But they use that as the trophy, and they punish you with that, well, you're not going to get it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. But, you know, like Eric.
Wait a second. Taking away your good guy letter makes it that much harder to willfully gain employment. And when you consider that a lot of people are retiring in their 40s and 50s and need employment, not having that good guy letter then stands in the way as a barrier.
Well, people think that, Jack, and in all actuality, it really doesn't, because, again, Quatisha Epps, she has hers. She has her HR 218 and she has her security license. And, you know, she didn't leave in what they call good standing with the department. And there's a few other people that were released from this job that still has the same qualifications, but they like to tell you that because they don't want you to leave, and they don't want cops to have any knowledge on how you can go about it. You know, I don't want to do promotion for him or anything, but you can actually go on Eric Sanders' website and you can actually see and read how you can go about getting your HR 218 and getting all that stuff without the good guy letter. But, you know, I didn't feel this was merited about how I left this job. You didn't give me 30 days. I gave you 30 days. You didn't present a case to me. So how am I not leaving the job in good standing? We put ready for trial. Eric put May 26th, April 26th, he said, we're ready for trial. He never heard anything back at all. How are you investigating me? You don't even speak to Sal Greco. You're saying he gave me the information. I'm saying I didn't give him anything. You don't even interview him. You don't even reach out to him.
Because they're in the bullying business, not the practicality business. They don't want to give you transparency in terms of the investigations they're conducting, because that would expose all the cracks in the foundation. In other words, they don't want to talk about what they're saying with Sal. They don't want to talk about what they're looking at internally, because that would be to them like they're showing you their hand of cards, which they don't want to do. Even though this isn't a matter of playing blackjack or poker or anything like that, this is a matter of being honest with people who work for you, which is the most screwed up part about the NYPD's investigations.
Yeah, and they're not really doing real investigations. They're disappointing.
Oh,
that's the disappointing part.
No, this was rather disgusting, but there'll be a lot more to this. I mean, Dave, we've been going on it for a while, and I think I mean, we already knew there was going to be a part 2 to this.
Oh yeah,
we got part 2 to a lot of this stuff, including this case. Yeah. And I know exactly who this lieutenant is. I know who you all are. There'll be a part 2 to this. There'll be more to come involving Epps' whole case and everything. And I don't get too emotional on things, but when I hear certain birdies chirp in my ear about things, especially when it came to you, I mean, I've known you a lot longer than I knew these other clowns, and to hear you got fired because of me or something, it just, you know, this is the Joe Cop view, looking through the little glass, and you don't, you know, you see what you want versus what really goes on. But I just, you know, I just want that cleared up, that Dave's been through a lot. He's been targeted a lot more than people even knew. And he even got in trouble, as he said. He didn't even get in trouble. They used this stupid smoker thing to modify him for 4+ years. Then he's chugging along, he's doing everything he's supposed to do. And then all of a sudden, someone, and I know who you are, okay? I know why you're upset. I know why you're upset too. We're going to get into that, because I know your buddy who's now in CJB, who's a disgrace from community affairs and should be in prison right now and prosecuted for what he did, stealing. That's all going to come out. Okay. Yep. we got your number. So, for me, I take, pleasure that you came on and you had the courage to do this. But I know you've been wanting to do this for a while. It's just hard because you're on the job. So any final words before, you're going to have to pick this up in the future, especially with what's coming?
Yes. Jack, first time meeting you. Pleasure speaking with you. Looking forward to doing a lot more and coming on your show a lot more, Sal, to speak about not just my issues, but other issues with other cops and other things. It's a pleasure to finally come on your show. Contrary to what everybody thinks, that we speak every day and I give you all types of information. Definitely not the truth. But now that I'm retired, and if I could help with anything, I definitely will. I hope that everyone that was listening today is very informed about what's really going on in the department. And we're going to obviously discuss a lot more. And again, Zoran, because you like the point, if you're watching or any of your people are watching, please have us come in. I would love to talk to your people. And you did a great job with hiring Edwin Raymond, contrary to what some people say. I think you got this one right, because he can't be bought. He can't be bought, and he's not going to be maneuvered or manipulated into doing anything that's illegal. He's going to get the sheriff's department on the right track. Hopefully you can get rid of that soccer mom and get rid of that IAB, because that's the worst group going right now is Papa Smurf and the knee pad boys that are there, who's just ruining people's career. And, thank you. I appreciate it, Sal. And we'll speak as always anyway. All right?
Of course. We'll be talking like we have been for 10 plus years, despite what they're saying. Have no idea about, our friendship and what we've both been through at different times, but almost at the same time, culminated together. So,
yeah, Dave, great meeting you, great talking to you, and this is the first of many conversations that we're going to be having.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, you're just beginning to tell it, so we're looking forward to having you back on another episode of the show in the future.
All right, thank you, brother. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, Dave, thanks so much, Dave. Have a good one.
All right, you got it.
We'll talk later. There you have it, folks. Dave Terrell, who's been through so much. And I told you, he's a wealth of knowledge, and there's so much more.
Yeah.
And there's more to come in the future with Dave and everything that's going on. And I don't like to get emotional, but when some people, it's just, you don't know anything. And you talk a lot of garbage, and you can do what you want. It's a free country, but it's not factual. And you don't know anything about me or Dave or the investigations that happen or anything like that. But what can I say? I guess when you're a little Chihuahua, you want to be the Great Dane, but sorry, pal, I'm the Great Dane, and you'll always be a little Chihuahua. So, before we leave, I guess I brought up the Mets swept through this weekend, so that's a little bit of the sport.
Yeah, calm down. Don't spike the football in the end zone just yet, big guy. Sweeping a team that hasn't been able to figure out how to negotiate a cable TV.
Swept the Mets last weekend. I was there for it. So.
I know that you guys got revenge on them, but let's remember that the Marlins have one of the lowest payrolls in baseball. The Mets have one of the highest. So I'm not going to brag here.
But I guess the last thing I want to mention was the thing with Nick Shirley, because his social engineering. Jack, what do you guys?
We're going to touch on that briefly, because I know that that's a big topic of conversation. Perhaps we're going to cover it a little bit more on a future episode. But I mean, listen, I was in France all of last week, as a lot of people know on the platform. I shared it. I talked about it. And I met some foreigners from the UK and Australia and various other countries. And they kind of laugh at our political system, because it seems like we're entrapped in this system where we're always fighting each other, and we can never figure out rational solutions to problems that actually work for people. And what's going on with Nick Shirley right now in California is no different. Obviously, Nick Shirley went out to California. He exposed some of the wasteful spending, the fraud. Some of it was legitimate. Some of it wasn't. Some of it didn't uphold in the courtroom when it was presented, which goes to show that it was all a socially engineered plot to try and depict fraud as being one thing or another. But this is just one example of politicians not understanding how to solve problems here. There's a bill right now going through the California Assembly, AB 2624, Privacy for Immigration Support Services Providers. So, I mean, it's a rational solution to the issue, right? Because it creates limitations where social media influencers can't just go up and start recording people on the street, which makes sense given that they've gone a little bit haywire and tried to fit their own agenda and narrative. But this is the part of the bill which is totally ridiculous, in my opinion. Existing law prohibits a person, business, or association from knowingly publicly posting or publicly displaying, disclosing, or distributing in internet websites or on social media the personal information or image of any designated healthcare services patient. Okay, so maybe it's a good idea to put in guardrails as it pertains to allowing social media influencers to film, but you can't totally prohibit showing places that might be committing fraud, or saying you need a permit or you need a license, or you can't show people's personal information on social media. No, if someone's committing fraud, you can show it, but there needs to be some sort of guardrails in place that like say, all right, if you're conducting investigation into this, you need to present explicit evidence that this place is committing fraud before you go in and actually film them. You can't outright ban influencers from filming places. And again, like, our politicians don't want to create rational solutions that allow people to find common ground solutions. All they want to do is fit their own agenda, say we're going to ban this or we're going to ban that. And at the end of the day, we're not any better off or worse, Sal, because now the social engineers are going to be angry because you took away all their ammunition for exposing fraud. And the rational people are going to be angry because there's no system in place to filter what's real from what's fake. So it feels like we're at this stalemate where no side is winning or losing, and we're back to square one. And we just have no consideration for what's rational. It's really sad.
I want to say this too. I think that's crazy. You know, you should be able to film people as long as from a distance, not getting in anyone's face. Also, Nick Shirley, today there's a whole article on X I read that Nick Shirley's part of this social engineering thing where basically the White House, there's documents that there's AI involved. All this stuff I've been telling you. Whenever I tell you something, folks, you may not like me personally, or you think whatever, or you do like me, but if you just follow my thread or what I tell you, you're going to say, oh my God, there's something. And that's all I try to do. And that's what this program does. We're a little niche program. We're not just Joe Cop stuff, because that's not me. We're not just public safety. We're not just NYPD. We're not just sports. We're not just lifestyle. We're just about everything. That's what I like to do here. Guys, if you can, I didn't say this on the show, but go, if you want to be an Italian American Civil Rights League member, IACRL.org. We just did an event there in Mulberry Street. The Manhattan chapter is growing. There it is. Sign up, become an Italian American Civil Rights League member. A lot of events coming in the future. SEOginzos.com. Tell them you're a friend of Sal. You get 10% off. Whatever you need on your social media, especially with SEOs, because there's a lot of social engineering and you got to get around all of that because they try to slow you down with everything. And, of course, salgreco.com, where we're writing articles, we're producing videos, we're doing all kinds of things. And this is a supporter-funded operation. So you can hit the get in the fight button or the support button. Any donation goes a long way in trying to expand this operation. And, of course, you can buy some shirts. There's a social engineering shirt. There's the Joe Cop shirt. There's a hairbag shirt. There's everything there. SalGreco.com. A lot more to come there. But there's like 5 articles we wrote this week alone. Jack writes there, too, as well. So,
yeah, we're going to have more content coming to the website as well. I mean, we just give slivers and tidbits and pieces at the end of the show about some very important stories that are going on in the news cycle, but we're going to start to expand out and do longer form content on the website. So be on the lookout for that. I might do a longer form video about the new bill that's going through California, AB 2624, in regards to Nick Shirley. So be on the lookout for that as well.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to come in the future. So I guess that'll wrap this up. I'd like to thank once again Dave Terrell, my good friend, to come in here and setting the record straight. A lot more to come with that. Also, everyone that was in the chat, we thank you very much for always supporting us. We'll be back on Thursday at 11:05 a.m. with a lot more. We're gonna piggyback off this stuff. There's other stuff that I didn't get to that I do have. I might make you hear about. So tune into that. Also, don't forget to follow us at the Sal Greco Show now on Facebook, of course, on Rumble, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. At the Sal Greco on Instagram and X also. And, of course, follow Jack on X and Instagram at J_Stern97. So without any further ado, we'll see you on Thursday. But until then, we're signing off from a soon, hopefully no hurricane, South Florida, where, as you know, it is a sunny place for shady people.
What I'm asking New Yorkers for is to look back at all the things I've done as a deputy commissioner for operations, the assistant as assistant commissioner, and my time as a not only as a New Yorker but as a police officer. I get stuff done.
Listen, there was a book that came out that Jasmine Ray wrote, and in the Daily News today, it was stated that there was a sexual action that happened in Borough Hall. She reported in that book, and it wasn't. You're a dark, sick person, man. You know that? You're a dark, sick person. Your name was on the byline. And there's some of you that have been covering me. You guys could part. Let me do this. Y'all could depart. Y'all could depart. Some of you have been covering me for 3.5 years. Some of you are so sick and dark, and you're the leader of that. You're one of the most dark writers that I've ever seen in this city. And your personal sick vendetta and the sickness of how you think of over-sexualizing a black man, that in the book is stated that there was a sexual action in Borough Hall. That was never in the book. But that's typical of the sickness and the darkness of your sick mind. You're one of the sickest reporters I know. Go to the next question. You're a sick person.